Okay, welcome to 14 Days of Love and our opening group call. Thank you so much for joining. I know it's difficult to make the time for these calls in our schedules, but thank you so much for joining. I am going to explain a little bit about how this works, and this is being recorded for the benefit of those who can't join live, so welcome if you're watching on catch-up. So the 14 Days of Love, some of you might have participated when I ran it in February of last year in a slightly different format. So this time I have recorded quite the body of the videos in advance, and I have put them on my course platform. So you will receive access to a video every day. So a new video drops every day and you have access to that. And today was a longer video, day one, self-connection. It was a bit longer and there were a few introductory videos. But for the coming days, there are some really short videos as well, literally 2 minutes long to get you to think about something, and then some questions that you can answer. So it is designed to fit into your busy schedules and to just give you that nudge to think about one aspect of self-love every day. And there is also a Facebook group which I have opened, and hopefully you have the link to that or you have requested to join. If you haven't, you can let me know on this call. And so we have our material that comes on the course platform. We have our Facebook group where we can communicate with each other, share our progress, share any thoughts, share any answers to the questions that I ask underneath the videos. And then we have this call today, and then our closing call on the 22nd of January at 5 o'clock. So that's the course finishes in 2 weeks' time on the Sunday, and then our final call is on the Monday. And if anyone at that point wants to continue to journey with me, there will be more, I'll have more offerings to share with you over the course of the next weeks. Why this particular course and why self-love? As I explained, if you've watched the introductory videos, for me, this is the foundation of healthy relationships and a fulfilling life. And as many of you will know, if you have worked with me or are familiar with me, my work always goes deep. So when we talk about self-love, everyone talks about self-love. Everyone talks about self-esteem and self-confidence, and we all know that we need those things. But why is it so difficult for many of us to love ourselves, to take care of ourselves, to value ourselves, to express our needs and wants, to set and hold healthy boundaries in relationships, romantically, friendships, work relationships? Why is it so hard? I know it's hard for many of us because it's hard for me. And the reason why I think it's helpful to be nudged every day on one of these topics is it brings it to the forefront, puts it on the front burner, reminds us to take care of ourselves, reminds us that self-care isn't selfish. But, you know, over the course of these videos, and I will be doing some additional ones that I'll pop in the Facebook group, you know, I really encourage you not just to think about the surface aspects, taking care of myself, loving myself, building self-esteem, but also about the deeper blocks. Why is it hard? You know, and I do a lot of work around this myself, and it is hard for me to unconditionally love myself because I didn't receive unconditional, consistent love. And many of you I know, because I've worked with some of you, have similar experiences, and it wasn't anyone's fault and it wasn't deliberate. It was the circumstances that we were brought up in. Perhaps people weren't present emotionally, perhaps they were absent physically, perhaps they were absent emotionally, perhaps they were addicted, Perhaps they sadly died. Perhaps they left. Perhaps our caregivers divorced. And all these things happen to us that leave messages and leave us with some core beliefs of, I'm not enough. I don't deserve. I don't have needs and wants. It's not safe to have needs and wants. It's not safe to speak my truth. It's not safe to be me. I have to please others in order to feel good or in order to feel safe. I have to put others' needs first in order to survive or in order to feel safe. So these are the messages that I definitely relate to. Some of you might relate to. And the intention with this course is to work on those messages by supporting us to focus on the good things, the self-love, the self-esteem, the self-confidence. I'm going to talk about self-forgiveness and self-compassion because many of us struggle with those as well. We struggle to be kind to ourselves. And I'm going to talk about lots of other 14 topics related to self something. So yeah, that's what I want to say about the course. I would like to invite you on this particular call to say why you're here and say what you think you need in this area of self-love or self-respect or self-esteem. What is it that might be missing for you? So we're going to do that. The first thing, or before we do that, is to check in with you and with the course. So I'm gonna pause the recording for a moment, and this is for you to just to let me know if anyone has any issues with the course or doesn't understand what they're doing. So if you're watching on catch up, just to let you know what we've done, we've gone around the virtual room and people have talked about why they're here, why they're on this course and what they're struggling with. And it brought up a few really interesting topics, which I'd like to review. Self-parenting. So that is one of the topics that we'll be exploring. And, for me, learning to be a good parent to myself, understanding that there is a frightened child inside me who wants and needs to get everything right and everything perfect. Otherwise, she doesn't feel safe, who is frightened of expressing her needs and wants, who doesn't believe she has needs and wants, who doesn't feel enough. So all these feelings that the inner child has, that the child inside me has, they get in the way of me and us showing up in the world, going for what we want, having the relationships that we want, speaking our truth, standing up for ourselves. So reparenting ourselves. And, I talk about this a lot, but it's not easy to do. If I just think today, have I parented myself today? Well, I've had lunch and I got out for a walk. I've had a busy day and have I met my needs? Have I parented myself? Have I mothered myself? And I think there's an interesting question around self-mothering and self-fathering, because many of us had absent fathers as well, emotionally absent, or perhaps they weren't there at all. So what qualities would a good mother bring to us, and what qualities would a good father bring to us? Yeah. And we talked about, someone shared about decision making and how difficult it is to make decisions. And that relates to commitment, which we also talked about. So, I talk a lot about commitment and fear of commitment. I have a whole course on how to find an emotionally available partner, because that is about us being emotionally available, and being willing to face our fears of commitment. But when I think about my fear of commitment, not just romantic commitment, but commitment in my work, commitment to activities, commitment to people, commitment to myself. My primary fears around commitment are I'm going to feel trapped, I'm going to feel suffocated, I'm going to make the wrong choice, I won't be able to get out, I'm going to be stuck. And that's very black and white thinking. And black and white thinking is childlike thinking. Children think in black and white. Adults are more able to embrace the shades of grey and the nuances, and adults, we're supposed to be more emotionally resilient. So we make a decision, and if it goes wrong, then we're okay with that. But when we're in the child mode, we make a decision and it goes wrong, and then we're crushed, and it's not enough. So we talked about commitment. And as I said, you have committed to this group course. And the key is to commit to yourself every day. So that might take a little bit of energy to make sure that you can watch the video, reflect on the questions, and then commit to the whole thing, because it's only 2 weeks. And I know it's easy to drop out of things because I've done it myself. But let this 2-week course be a marker of your willingness to commit in 2024, of your willingness to commit to yourself, to your self-care, to your emotional development, and for those of you who would like one, to the prospect of finding and forming a healthy and loving relationship. So let this 2 weeks stand as that marker. And, I think we can make a big difference in 2 weeks. I really do. If you think about if you were going to exercise a muscle every day for 2 weeks, that muscle, you would see a change. You would see definition in that muscle. So think about committing for the whole 2 weeks. What else did we talk about? We talked about how many of us are good. Good isn't the right word. Many of us are very committed and perhaps successful in our work lives, in our professional lives. And whereas in our romantic lives, maybe that's not maybe it's on the back burner completely. Maybe it's not something we even think about. Maybe we feel hopeless and that there's no point. But I know that I put my all into my work because I was good at it. I found it easy to be good at it. Hard work, good at work. When it came to relationships, there was no sort of, that it was hard and it was a struggle and it was painful. And so I just carry on working because that's easier. It gets instant results. I don't have to get sort of stuck in all this murky emotional growth and healing stuff. Just get on with my work. But now I see that my emotional growth and healing is really important in my work too. So it spans all areas of our lives. Yeah, so I'm just gonna wrap up there. And I'm going to talk about day one. Let's check the time. And there's also, let me just check there. Yeah, someone's asked if they want an accountability buddy. That is something that I arrange on my larger courses, but you're very welcome to find accountability buddies for this program. In group settings or regular group meetings, I worry that it's too much pressure and that I'll be trapped. I'm wary of drama. Mean girls. Okay, so being in social situations. Yeah. I mean, I really struggle with regular social meetups as well. And I swim in the sea a lot, and there's a million groups here that swim in the sea together, and I tend to spontaneously swim on my own. I find partly because that is my moment of absolute bliss and freedom. And I find I find like having to navigate relationships in that is tricky, but also the regular commitment. Um, but I hope through this course and through anything else that we might do together, that we really come to understand this fear of commitment, but also what I realized when I was thinking about commitment over the last few weeks is if I don't commit, I don't get the reward. So I didn't commit to a romantic relationship or my romantic life or then my partner for years when I first met him. I didn't commit. And we don't get the reward. We're 1 foot in, 1 foot out, sitting on the fence, ambivalence, indecision, confusion. And now that I'm on the other side of the commitment romantically, have bought a house and married someone, I see that it was only by absolutely committing 2 feet in that I get the reward, which is to be with someone with whom I feel entirely comfortable and totally able to be my true self, and the security and the joy of that. So I had to go through a really tough time with my own commitment issues to get through to the other side. And I see how that applies to all areas of my life. So I need to commit to my business in order for my business to flourish. I need to commit to my novel if I'm going to finish it and get it published. So I've committed to finish it to the end, which I have. Now I need to carry on committing until I don't want to put it in a drawer. So we have to keep committing to reap the rewards. And I think that comes from friendships as well and social groups as well. Um, yeah. And I try and challenge myself to do things in small. So maybe I commit once a month to something, and everything else I do a little bit freely and spontaneously. And then we notice what comes up for us when we commit. So I just want to talk about today's theme, which is self-connection. And it can feel a little bit, it's kind of difficult to put your finger on self-connection. How connected do we feel today? And I find it easier to think about the ways in which I disconnect. And some of you will have heard me speak about this before. So as I'm speaking, just think about the ways in which you disconnect. So my primary way of disconnecting now is through compulsive work and busyness, and creating a bit of chaos and drama in my work life. So piling on too much, needing to do lots of things, feeling adrenalized. So I disconnect from myself and my truth and my feelings. The ways I used to disconnect are much sort of easier to notice, even though I was in denial about them at the time. So binge eating, overeating, binge drinking, compulsive exercising. Obviously, now we've got our phones screens, which are just such an easy way to disconnect, which I obviously use, just like everyone else, sometimes to disconnect and numb out and scroll. TV and also sometimes, romantic relationships, drama. Yeah. So think about the ways in which you disconnect. And if anyone would like to share anything about that, you can pop it in the chat or raise your hand if you'd like to, and I can pause the recording if you'd like me to. Just think about ways in which you disconnect from yourself, and just maybe think about today. A few of you said at the beginning that you were connected, that you felt quite connected. What contributed to that? And what disconnects you? Or what might have disconnected you today? Yeah. Does anyone want to share about that? How to Break Up with Your Phone. Someone says they're reading a short book called How to Break Up with Your Phone. Yeah. Yeah, it's painful, isn't it, to see how much we and everyone else, how much time we spend on our phones and what it's doing to this is, this goes a bit political, but what it's doing to the social fabric of our country. Um, yeah. So maybe there's a commitment there to, well, read that book perhaps, but also to, yeah, take time away from your phone. I recently got a new phone and I kept my old one, and my old phone is still connected to Wi-Fi, so I can access my meditations, my meditation app on my old phone, but I can't access WhatsApp or messages or emails because it doesn't have a SIM. So I have found that really useful because I like to use a meditation app called Insight Timer quite often. But when I open my phone in the morning at 6:30 or whatever, there might be a text or WhatsApp. I have all my notifications off, but there still might be something that I see. Or I might be tempted just to have a look. And not having that on my other phone is really helpful. I also have the phone without the SIM as my alarm, so I don't need my phone in the bedroom. So, is there anything you need to do to break up with technology, screens? Is it avoidance? Is it distraction? Think about that. And the other sort of deep thing to say about connection, which is something I have to work on all the time. The thing about being connected to ourselves and to others is that we are present. We are present. We are present to the moment. We are present to our own feelings, and we are present to other people. And for many of us, myself, definitely, being present in my childhood wasn't comfortable. Being present to what was going on around me, there was alcoholism, there was dysfunctional relationships. Being present to that wasn't comfortable. It felt difficult and painful. And then being present to the emotional pain that I felt inside in that environment, and when my parents split up and my dad moved out, and being present to the feelings of discomfort I felt around certain family members was intolerable. So we find ways to not be present. And they might be distraction, food, compulsive activity, compulsive work, compulsive scrolling, compulsive dating on apps or whatever it is, but we're not present. And, this might require some thinking about for some of you, how to be more present or what it means to you to be present. Am I present? Like over Christmas, when perhaps you were with family members or friends, were you present? Was I present? I know I ate too much on Christmas Day, partly because it's Christmas Day, partly because I didn't feel entirely comfortable in the environment I was in. So I find ways to take the edge off my presence, take the edge off my feelings. And for me, like if I eat too much, then my head's like, oh, you've eaten too much, you're going to get fat. So then I've got a whole other distraction going on in my head that takes me away from the present, from presence. So that's why self-connection for some of us is difficult, because perhaps when you were a child, being present to what was going on around you was, for survival purposes, it wasn't a good idea. So we found survival tools, strategies to not be present. So yeah, I just wonder if anyone has any thoughts about that. how you feel about presence, what you might use to disconnect from yourself. And does anyone want to speak? I can pause the recording, or there's something in the chat. I disconnect by distancing myself from friends and family who could actually help. Yeah, self-sabotage. Yeah, so not asking for help. And do you understand? Is there fear there? I guess that's what I'm thinking. Often, yeah, often when we distance ourselves, it's because we're afraid. And if we've had challenging relationships in our early life, then relationships will feel challenging. It will be difficult to feel comfortable. Does anyone have any thoughts about connection? So phone, endless scrolling. I put a 60-minute digital limit on my phone. So does that mean you can only spend 60 minutes on it? No. What does that mean? I'd love to know what that means.
Kat, it's something that you can do on your phone. You can set your phone that you'll be timed out after 60 minutes
Okay.
of looking on the phone. So then I have to really try to use my 60 minutes valuably throughout the day then. Yeah.
No, that's interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. Everything just takes, well, for me, everything takes so much longer than I expect. So I might do an Instagram post on my phone. I think it's going to take me 10 minutes. 45 minutes later, I'm still doing it. So that's helpful actually, I think. And I do use little timers. I've got an Alexa behind me, or I've got a timer on my phone. Like, so how long do I want to spend doing things? And even if I just carry on beyond the alarm, at least I'm aware that, okay, that's taken 40 minutes, not 10. Yeah. And, the connection piece is something that is really helpful to do, obviously, first thing in the morning. So I appreciate my material involves you using tech. But before engaging in any tech or looking at any material, you might want to commit 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever you can. Some of you will already do this, to connecting to yourself, to deciding who's in charge as you go through the day, like putting your loving parent in charge of your day. How am I going to do my day with my loving parent in charge? And this is something I have to ask myself all the time, because the inner child, the kid, the teenager, the rebel, the frightened one, all these different parts of me takes over. So I have to try and get my loving parent in the driving seat of my day. And for those of you who are, quite engrossed in work, but want to look at love and relationships, it might be about, asking the loving parent to help to show you the way, to spend a little bit of time in that area. If you're just starting out considering looking at finding a healthy relationship, I have lots of other material that I can share with you after this course that would help you. But I would suggest you just give it a little space in your life, in your day, in your thoughts, in your reflections, in your heart. Just give it a little window. I'm going to give this a little window, and that might just be sitting and journaling and how do I feel about a relationship? What would I like? What comes up in me? What fears come up in me? And this is the connection. This is connecting to yourself and to your truth. Connecting to what's really going on inside. So what I'm going to do is, I think I'm going to wrap up the formal part of this call. I'm going to stay on for a little bit. I gave us an hour and a half in case we needed that time, but if we don't need that time, we can wrap up early. I am going to actually, while I'm here, oh, I can do that when the recording's off because somebody wants to know about the Facebook group. I'm just going to summarize self-connection. When we're not connected, for many of us, it is because it's not comfortable or nice to be present to our feelings, or because we learned in our childhood that it wasn't comfortable or nice to be present to our feelings or to anything else around us, that it felt uncomfortable or we didn't feel safe. So we invent all these ways to disconnect. Some of them are very obvious: binging food, alcohol, phones are a little bit more subtle, but that's another way to disconnect. Subtle because we often need to use them for our work or our life. Numbing out on TV, again, it can be more subtle because we can relax in front of the TV, but when it becomes a disconnection strategy, then that's different. You know, when we decide not to do all those things that we know are good for us or that we need to do, and we just numb out in front of TV. That is a distraction, a disconnection. And when I talk about presence, think about whether you are in the past, in the present, or in the future. So if I can spend a lot of my time in the past, regretting things that I've done or worrying about decisions I've made, wishing that I'd made them differently, going back over things. So that is not present. That is churn, that is rumination, and that is based in the past. It's not in the present. And the other thing I can do, and we can do, is future tripping. So I live in a fantasy world where I've got more money and my life's different, or yeah, I just live in this fantasy that isn't the present, and that distracts me from getting on with what needs to happen in the present. So if I would like to buy myself a new car, like that's right now for me, that's fantasy future because it's not available to me. So what is present? Present is the action I need to take today to launch a course or bring in some more coaching clients. That is present. I can save, I can put £1 in a pot. That is present. But the future tripping fantasy, it's good to have dreams and visions. And I know I have my Create Your Vision workbook, which some of you will have seen, and it's on my website. It's good to have dreams and visions. But the most important aspect of having dreams and visions is to break them down into the small steps we can take today in the present to move towards them, rather than live in the fantasy and live in the future. So think about, am I present, or am I in the past? Am I in the future, or am I disconnected from myself through one of these coping strategies? And if I'm disconnected, what is it that I'm actually disconnecting from? What feelings am I disconnecting from? What is uncomfortable? What do I not want to feel? And, in the meditation that is day 1 of the course, of the 14 Days of Love, it is intended to help you to step down inside your heart and inside your feelings to the level beneath the surface. Beneath the, oh, I'm worried, I'm stressed, I'm busy, to, okay, I kind of feel sad or lonely or peaceful or joyful. But what's beneath the surface? So many of us, when people say, how are you? We say, I'm fine, I'm busy. It's not really a feeling, is it? What's going on beneath the surface? So presence, connection to self. When we're disconnected, what strategies are we using to disconnect? Why do we do that? What are we avoiding? And this is important because this is your gateway to a healthy, loving, long-lasting relationship. And it is my gateway as well, because once we're in a relationship, we have all manner of opportunities to sabotage it by being not present, by being disconnected, by using all the same strategies we used when we weren't in a relationship. Like, we don't just change when we find a relationship. We don't just, have a brain transplant. We are still us, but we're in a relationship. So, and sometimes it brings up really challenging things in itself. So, we need to stay connected. And, think about reparenting. That is one of the topics that we'll look at in a future date, but it is something to really think about, how to reparent yourself. Who's in the driving seat right now? Okay, I am going to pause the recording, stop the recording. I'll pause it in case I have some wonderful things I need to say towards the end.